we choose differently for different reasons what we believe. Um, why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have this happen a lot with when I'm talking to anti-vaccine people, where like they'll say PCR is fake and it's all doesn't make any sense, and I'm like, I've done millions of PCR reactions, and this is what's happened. Like I literally have, and it's like it's really frustrating because it's like an anti-expertise position, but like
Mhm.
there has to be some learned experience, like some wisdom from what's happened in the past that you can use and help predict the future. It has to be. I, I don't know. It's just it's so interesting to talk to someone that just doesn't recognize any of it. There's no experts. There's no. It's kind of like an anti-elitist mentality where it doesn't mean that. And yeah, I disagree. Obviously, some predictive. There has to be some predictive nature to science. Otherwise, it would be meaningless.
Mm.
Yeah, and even in that notion too of like the anti-expertise takes, I mean, I think a decent amount of it stems from people not like having everything in front of them. Hence, like you always get that common meme argument of, "Oh, I'm doing my own research. Like I'm the
Hmm.
one doing it. I'm the one making the observations, not you. This is what my research tells me." I think that ultimately stems from a desire of people want to learn. Like I don't think that people are necessarily like anti-knowledge or anti-learning. They just, I don't know, might fall victim to confirmation bias or might be looking in the wrong places or might not necessarily have an idea of why some arguments are less parsimonious than other ones. So I think at the end of the day, people want to have that firsthand, sensory observation of things. They want to almost be able to do experiments in some cases to confirm what's going on around them. But if they lack the ability to do that, they might not necessarily receive that information coming from somebody else very well. They might view that as somebody, telling them that their senses are different than what they perceive, and then they react and act out externally because of that.
Hmm.
So it almost feels like if people approached, let's say, COVID, for example, like you use the PCR reactions as an example, if they had more of a crystal clear understanding, especially with something like a RT lamp or something, a color change PCR where they can like see a color change with their own two eyes if like a COVID test is positive or something, like
Yeah.
things that are more like observationally evident, I think people might start to come around because they won't necessarily be able to try and pick things apart if what they're seeing is what you're seeing, right? If we show them what we know to be true through their senses, that might win them over a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to their senses, right? Where it's like, I need to see for myself. Kind of like, have you ever actually seen DNA? Have you seen it though? It's like, well,
But
Technically.
yeah.
but it also goes down to the like I will disagree with Marcus on this end a little bit, because I think people want to know, but I don't think they want to learn. Like I
Yeah.
think we should just separate those. Like knowing generally, like dominates over learning. And when people say, "Oh, I've done my research," they are not doing really research. They're just reading a couple of sources from secondhand again, because like learning is, I think most of learning should be either through the like a like it's a more diligent approach to understanding a question. It's like you have to go and look at like multiple resources and multiple sources and come to like some conclusions that are like um that are consistent with the other knowledge that's there, right? Like then you can say, "Oh, I learned this," like that's something. But I think people try to know things. That's where the problem like starts to rise. But there is another problem. There's another level of problem on these kind of issues where people, like, I think all kinds of groups of people, all kinds of the societies, all sizes of societies, like from several people to maybe like hundreds to millions, or gigantic societies like ours right now. They have to be built on trust.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and that trust, if you break that trust relationship, people won't trust in the authority, and I think that's where everything starts to become shaky. If someone cannot say, oh, I trust in the experts, then like they will start putting their trust into other experts they think who like the experts are, and that's where the knowledge becomes a issue of personal experience and personal beliefs. And I think like I'm not really blaming those people for like trusting the wrong sources. It is like it we are failing on something that they are not trusting us to, like that goes like, because trust relationship is just not one way, it's two ways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too. Like, I mean, in the COVID example, like these people have never even heard of RNA or PCR, and now we're like, trying to catch them up on 20 years of molecular biology, and it's a lot. To get back to the reading though, it's like it's interesting. Like I guess you were making an inductive argument that like SARS-CoV-2 has RNA and we can detect it through qPCR and like all this kind of stuff. Or to use an analogy that they use, like the white swan's logical fallacy. It's like, I think that what they're coming at it is the anti-vaxxer is coming at it in their minds in good faith, being like, I've never seen a swan, dude. Like, I've never seen a swan. I've looked at all the birds that I've seen, and I've never seen a white swan or a swan in general. And they're thinking about all these different birds that they've seen, but it's like, and then we got to go like a step back and be like, okay, birds have lots of different species. One of them is a white swan, or a swan. Doesn't have to be the color. We've inferred that a lot of these are white